It's Monday, February 17th, 6:30 p.m. I call to order this public hearing. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yep. Tristan. Here. Ty.
Here.
Dave.
Here.
Mark Porter. Here. Magdal Robbins.
Here.
Christy Kessel.
Here.
Deborah Williamson.
Here.
Mark Thornton.
So this is the time and place for anyone to share thoughts or insights connected to the 2025, 2026, and 2026-2027 school calendar. Do we have any comments came in or?
No written comments received.
Okay, no comments received. So I'll move to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Sorry,
So moved. Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So public hearing is adjourned and we'll switch over here
6:31.
at 6:31 p.m. Thank you. And now I'll call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Board of Directors of the Fairfield Community School District. This regular monthly board meeting is to be held at 6:30 p.m. on the third Monday of each month. The meeting is open to the public and the public is encouraged to attend. Time is provided in the meeting for public input. The mission of the Fairfield Community School Board of Directors is One Fairfield, where relationships foster growth, protect learners, unlock individual potential, and serve every student every day. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mark Porter.
Here.
Ty Ward.
Here.
Christy Kessel.
Here.
Magdal Robbins.
Here.
Mark Thornton.
Here.
Deborah Williamson.
Here.
Dave Eastburn.
Here.
All present.
Great. Do we have any perfections to the agenda?
I have none.
Nothing.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Porter and Thornton. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so first up we have our focus on learning with a presentation from Angela Jones, our Pence Elementary principal, to provide an update on the progress towards our building goals. This update will include key achievements, challenges, and ongoing efforts to support student success and align with the district's strategic objectives. Welcome,
Perfect.
Angela.
We good, Johnny?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll just get started here on this clicker. And there we go. I guess I want to start with the Fairfield FCSD or CSD goals. These were the goals that Zach had presented at the beginning of the year, talking about 100% students will demonstrate measurable growth in both ELA and math, but then also looking at students and staff will report a strong sense of belonging. I really want to be able to tie that into what we talk about here today. One of the pieces that we have done at Pence since my first year there is we've come together as a leadership team at the beginning of the year. Actually, I should back up. In June, when we get out of school, I meet with my leadership team and we go over the data. And really, it's a big time where we look through the ISAS data, we look through the conditions of learning data, we look through the FAST data, and really it just kind of gets ugly. This year, Kristen, coming in as our instructional coach, she was able to join us and really kind of dive into this piece. The piece that we really kind of struck on before was looking at that proficiency piece, and then we felt defeated because we put this goal up here. And one of the pieces that we walked away that day when we left was looking at growth. Because it really comes back to our mission statement, which I'll get to here in a second, was looking at that individual growth and seeing where kids can go. Part of Leader in Me, because we are a Leader in Me school, is looking at private and public victories. And the way that we were really looking at this is thinking about that big picture of the district and what the goals were. And it was really comical the first day I got together with Zach when we had an admin meeting and he talked about his goals. I was like, ooh, this is crazy. Because we did this in June, because we were talking about 100% growth and proficiency, because we wanted to be able to celebrate every kid. Because I'm gonna be honest with you guys, there's gonna be some kids that are never going to become proficient. I'm only gonna say that out loud because that is just the honest truth. But every kid can grow. Yes.
And every kid can celebrate this. A part of Leader in Me is we talk about WIGs, which is wildly important goals.
So obviously we have the district goals, but then we set goals for ourselves as a building, and these are our 3 goal areas that we have. These are looking at proficiency across all of the testing that we're doing between FAST and ISASS. But what we're really wanting to demonstrate, because we can do a dipstick check throughout the years through FAST testing, and to be able to say, hey, this is going to be a public thing that everyone is going to know, and we can show this. In a little bit, I'm going to show you a video that some of our kids put together showing where we are publicly displaying our growth. The other piece of this is within each grade, and each teacher has goals within their room, where again, that's a public. People can see this. We can see that growth that each class is doing. But there's also a private piece to this. Each of our students have a leadership binder where they're able to look at that growth and proficiency and keep track of that. So when your child has a student-led conference, they can go into that, show you the data, show you the graphs, and you can be like, you know what, that's our private victory that we get to have together, because not everybody needs to see that about each other. So looking at that, our first goal is 100% of students and teachers will have a private and public WIGS to celebrate student growth and proficiency. That first one is all about the AMath. Again, looking at that dipstick check 3 times a year. The second one is talking about our 7 habits, okay? One of the pieces that we do each year is we do an MRA, which is nice and short way, it's a survey. And really what we do is we get feedback from families, students, and teachers, and looking at the different domains that we have within leadership, looking at how we have school climate, how we have participation. One of the pieces that we got feedback from, and it was our lowest, was looking at that family engagement and families being a part of it, but also students having a leadership role within that. So our goal has kind of a 2-part fold to it, whereas we will have 100% of teachers be involved in it, but in the spring, students are going to be involved in it. So one of the pieces that we've been prepping for this whole year leading up to this is that when students do come to our family engagement night coming up next month, they are going to be in charge of taking their families around, showing where the 7 habits happen within the class, where they happen within the school. They'll have a bingo card, they fill it out. They'll also have different activities to do with their families, eat, and they get to turn their bingo card in for a prize. So that will fulfill that goal. That is our intentions. The third goal is looking at reading. Again, that's based upon A, reading, which is looking at your comprehension piece, also CBMR, which is that words per minute, but also we're also looking at accuracy as well, because we want our readers to be accurate. So that is kind of like a synopsis of things, which kind of leads me into our mission. A couple years ago, we developed our mission statement of Penn loves me for who I am, celebrates my growth, and encourages me to be my best at Penn I Matter, and Giddy Up got it at the end. One of the pieces that we really wanted to focus on here is that growth and looking at the individuals as themselves. We've revisited it every year here for the last 2 years, and it's unanimous. This is really what we want to stick with. Kids know it. They can recite it. They have gestures to it. It's just how we do business. Being a leader in Me School, we have a theme that we go through each year. This year's theme is about being outdoors, and the slogan is, together we can move mountains. So what we're going to show you, what I'm going to show you right next is a video that we've put together, and what you're going to be able to see is the mountains, where we can see that public piece of us looking at our goals. Oh, thanks, Johnny.
Welcome to Penn's Elementary. At Penn's, we are Leader in Me School. Leader in Me helps me develop my voice and leadership skills.
With being a Leader in Me School, we set goals for our school, our class, and ourselves. We call these WIGs, wildly important goals.
Penn's WIG is 100% of students will be proficient or show growth in reading and math. We use these mountains to show our progress from the fall to the winter benchmarks. These are public victories. Each grade level is shown a mountain, and we also have a mountain for the entire school progress.
We also graph our progress in each class. As a class, we set a goal together on where we want to be for the next benchmark check. This is another public victory.
In order to reach our goal, we must have lead measures. Lead measures are the action steps we take to make sure our goals are being met. One way we track our goals is to progress monitor each week. Students read with their teachers for 1 minute. We calculate how many words per minute and how accurately the passage was being read. After that, students graph their progress on a graph in their leadership binder. Each student has a leadership binder. This is a private victory. This is a collection of work and progress that students are making on goals, assignments, and self-play.
Part of working on ourselves is to find leadership within every student. All students are a part of a leadership team that meets once a week. These provide opportunities for students to use their voice in different leadership ways.
Another opportunity for student leadership is shown in the classroom jobs. Within each classroom, students take ownership by taking on a job within the classrooms. Some classrooms have students apply for these positions and fill out an application. Other teachers assign jobs based on the student's skill.
At Pence, our mission statement says it best.
Pence loves me for who I am, celebrates my growth, and encourages me to do my best. At Pence, I matter. Hashtag giddy up.
They might become famous. So that was a video that was put together through KRKN with our contract that we have. It was Pence's month, so they were able to put that together for us. So one of the pieces also I want to highlight in there when we talk about leadership teams, we have about 15 different leadership opportunities that kids can be a part of different teams throughout the community. From inclusion encouragers who are, letting us know about different disabilities, to our safety squad, to our crisis team who is bringing in blood drives just to be able to bring that leadership. And the one core thing about it is to either add value to your school or add value to our community. Those are the guiding principles there. One of the pieces I wanted to kind of look at here before we jump into the data, because that is why I am here and what we are doing, is to really go back to the brain research of knowing that before a student can learn, they have to feel safe and loved. That is the underlining current of everything that we do at Pence. And as a kid comes into the building, the slogan right there is very important to me, that you belong here. And I never want a kid to feel like they don't belong at Pence, because I want them there. And we want to see them succeed. We want them to see them do their best, and truly love them for who they are, because that's a great gift that we get every single day. So that's really what I want to make sure you guys knew before we get started on the big stuff. There we go. Oh. Here we go, professional development. In relation to our goals, I kind of wanted to touch on some of the different things that we've been working on this year. The PLC work that we have done, looking through the DeForest work, has probably been one of the most invigorating, motivating, frustrating, exciting pieces of work that we have done. And working through the guiding questions and just even all the components of those days that we've had together. Krista and I have spent a lot of time together, just really rehashing things. One of the pieces that you see on the left side, are two different pieces that look like quadrants. One of the pieces that we had worked on in an activity that was really like thought-provoking is thinking about what kind of school you went to. What kind of school would you want your child to go to? What kind of school do you teach in? And what kind of school do you want to teach in? It helps you be really reflective on where you've been and where you want to go. And one of the pieces that we were able to do was work through 4 different types of schools. And really at the end, what we're wanting to be able to do is be able to look at data and make sure that we're making the right decisions for kids. Also along the way, you're loving and supporting the kids for who they are. Because it's really easy to think as a teacher, I'm delivering this, you're gonna have to get it, it's the content, I've delivered it, it's done. It's also easy to run into that whole piece of like, the kids had so much trauma, they've had so many things going on in their lives, academics are gonna come second. We have to find the blend of it all. And that was really a piece of thinking about our mindset and thinking about where we are at Pence and working together for that. Another piece of that is working with others. We have an Enneagram graphic here in the bottom right, which shows all the teachers and associates in the building. We went through the Enneagram personality test, and we were able to see where everybody fell on this. What this really kind of helped us to understand is how we work with each other. I always said, I was a special education teacher prior to this, and I always said my job going into the gen ed classroom was like a forced marriage, because I was supposed to like the person I was teaching with, and I was supposed to do well at it. And that's really hard. It's kind of hard if you don't know who you're teaching with, and not everyone is as inclined to want to work with anybody. But going through all this piece of this work was really kind of helpful in knowing how our teams can work together. Better to look at the data. A piece here at the bottom is really looking at our teachers. We were going through ISASP. Probably one of my favorite days of PD, and probably Kristen would agree. Just the conversations and what we were able to take away from that, and how we've looked at our team meetings and how we've looked at professional development to really be able to dig deeper and just really to find those common themes and make sure we're all on the same page. And lastly, up here in the right-hand corner, John Gordon. I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it 100 more times. Yes, we are a leader in me school, and that's Covey's work, but also John Gordon's that guy that I kind of lean to of how he looks at things. And one of the pieces that we talk about a lot is the high state of mind, and being able to build that trust, to be able to speak the truth, to be able to encourage, unite people, have that positivity. Because when we work together, we work out of love, but when we work alone and we work in isolation, we work out of fear. And out of that becomes the doubt, the distortion, discouragement, distraction, and division. It's all the D words. And so that's that piece as we work together, is just kind of refocusing and talking about those pieces. The big stuff. So one of the pieces that coming into our goal for this year was to really make sure that we looked at that growth piece. When you see in the columns that are, if you are colorblind or have color issues, because I might call this a tannish yellow murky color, whatever you want to call it, that color, not white. What that is showing is growth. The number that you see at first would be this. For second grade, that is where they started, because we would not have any comparable testing in first grade to show where a first grader is to second grade for that fall benchmark score. So that's where they started as far as proficiency goes. So that's a bigger gap because that's not looking at growth. But what you're seeing for third and fourth grade would be the comparison from the spring of the previous year to the fall of the current year. The second number you're seeing would be the growth from fall to winter. So for second grade, the 45% growth that you see for A reading is where they were proficiency. But then what it's showing is that 95% of those students actually grew from the fall window to the winter window in A reading. That same thing looks true as you look through the growth for A math in CBMR. At the bottom, you see the PINS totals. What you see in that tannish yellowish colored columns is what you saw in those mountains in that video as well. And those are posted when you come into the front entryway, right after you go through the main doors. They're right there in the long hallway that goes west. And as you're looking at that data, you're saying, so what did you do with this data, Ange? So this is what we've done. So one of the pieces that we've identified is math. Math is an area right now that we have really shook up, to be quite honest with you. Third grade math, as we were looking through this work, we have really dug into the data. We have begun doing the beginning of the unit assessments. From there, we have leveled into different groups, and we're shaking all the kids up. So for instance, we have 5 sections, 3 sections teach at one time, 2 sections teach at another time. Those 3 classes are swapping kids. We have a high, medium, and low group. So we're able to really put some hands-on manipulatives for the lower kids. We're able to really reach the higher kids at a better level than we ever have. And the same way goes for the 2 groups. 4th grade, we're really meeting those needs by looking at the small group times and having those partnerships where we're able to swap the kids during that time. I would say wholeheartedly in the last 7 years, this is the most that we've looked at a lot of this data. You know, it's more than just a one-time snippet. It's also bringing in other pieces of formative data that we can use to make in the moment time decisions, and just really keep having those conversations. A word that I brought up last week at one of our trainings, because we talk about, how you're having to bring this data up and talk about it. I'm like, I kind of feel like it's regurgitation. It sounds kind of nasty, but it has to get ugly before it gets better, if this makes sense, because we're having to bring all this data out. It's ugly. It doesn't feel good to talk about things. It also doesn't feel good to be vulnerable, to talk about maybe where things aren't going so well and what we need to do better. But honestly, I feel it's going to make us better. And it's like one of those pieces that excites me, because as we look through the questions, and we call these our lead measures, and the kids talked about this in that video. What are those principles? What are those things that guide us? These are those 4 questions that we're talking about through DeFore's work with PLCs. And I think the big piece that we really talk about is really when we get to yes, what do we want students to learn, and how will we know if students are learning? We're really focusing on that second question, like, what are those assessments? What are those rubrics? So as when you as a parent come in and you say, like, how do you know this? We're able to show an artifact and really be able to, like, stand behind that firmer than we probably ever have. And then how are we going to respond? And I think this is a piece, there's also another graphic that we've been using, is identifying those kids who didn't make it, then also identifying those kids who did make it, but then also looking at those teachers whose kids did make it. What did you do? Maybe there's something I need to do. And then again, how I respond if a student already knows that, and looking at that enrichment piece and looking at those extensions. So those have been the 4 big questions that we have looked at to kind of keep things in the forefront with everything that we're doing right now. Some of the highlights I just kind of wanted to look at that wasn't shown in that graphic that we showed here a second ago was looking at that CBMR. 99% of those students grew and were proficient. Of that, 53% of those students grew at least 20 words, and 39% of those students grew 30 or more words. And that was from fall to winter. For accuracy, again, this is looking at how accurate of a reader you are. I'm sorry, John, I'm like really clicking here. 98% of those students grew and were proficient. 41% of those students were green. Greening means that they were at 95% or more being accurate as a reader. And 66% of those students were green at the middle of the year. So that grew, which is really what you wanted to hear. When we start talking about phonemic awareness and phonics, when that starts to strengthen, that accuracy score goes up. And then as a result, your CBMR goes up. And then as research talks about, if you become a fluent reader, then we talk about comprehension. As we looked at 3rd grade, 98% of those kids either grew and were proficient. Of that, 54% grew 20 or more words. 30% of those kids grew 30 or more words, which is great. The accuracy piece for 3rd grade, 94% of those kids grew and were proficient, but they were at 66% were green on that accuracy piece, and then we went to 78% at the middle of the year. For 4th grade, 98% of those students grew and were proficient. 66% of those students grew 20 or more words, and 36% of them grew 30 or more. Obviously, as you get older, probably you're not going to have as many go up as high, but that's still a good number. And this is a great piece to see that 100% of them grew and were proficient, but on that accuracy piece, they went from 87% to 91% being accurate readers. And we really talk about 95% being that magic number for accuracy. So that's a really good number to see as a whole student body for 4th grade. Oh, I think I'm right. There we go. And lastly, to tie into our goal with the engagement piece, in November of 2024, we had 500 plus people come to our family engagement night. That was 115 pizzas, which are stacked up there at the bottom. It was very well received. And again, our next one will be here on March 13th. A big piece that we also are going to add to this is Bruce is going to have his Tag X event. So our 4th grade students who will be doing, if you have ever watched a TED Talk, that's what it will be like. And they will be in the music room. It's probably one of the highlights of the end of the year with kids getting in front of everyone and speaking. They do a really good job. It's pretty cool. And lastly, which I didn't put on this slide, as far as pins goes, our Leader in Me Community Day is April 30th. It goes from 1:30 to 3. So if you guys would like to join us, we'll be sending out postcards So April 30th at 1:30. So we would love to have you guys there. One of the other pieces that Zach asked me to talk about was special education. That's the other part of my role here within Fairfield Schools. I think I'm over my 5 minutes that Zach gave me. Sorry. So as we look at our special education mission as a team, is to create a cohesive special education program amongst the pre-K-12 buildings and to build a capacity with the teacher leaders that we have within the district. And that's done by meeting once a month, but also there's daily emails, phone calls that go on between the buildings, between the admin and the teachers. But part of my commitments to the team is to have those monthly meetings to support the building principals with special education's teachers and their concerns and questions. But the building principals and the AA consultants in the building, I always want them to be the first line of support because I never want to feel like I'm going above the admin. I feel like that would not build a very cohesive program to make sure we're all on the same page. The other piece is to create a bridge between the buildings for a continuation of services and transitions and to support the special education delivery plan. So just a few highlights of what we've been working on. Obviously the monthly meetings at the high school, we are on what we call a level 2 IDA, DA status. Basically what that was looking at data back in 2018 to 2019. There's about a 2-year gap in there, and looking at basically what happened to students after they graduated, and looking at the dropout rate, looking at students who were either employed, went to military, went to a 4+ program, every possibility possible, and really looking at that. Our numbers were higher than the state average, which got us on an identification. So with that, we have a monthly meeting that we have to do, and that we work with the AA and the Department of Ed on ensuring what services we're providing our individuals at the high school level at this point. One of the pieces that we have to provide is a coach that oversees the plan. It has to be someone within the building. So Sweet Mallory Mann is that person who's overseeing it as a coach because she's in the thick of it all. But one of those pieces that we were also able to do is work with the AEA and partnering with their transition coordinator to make sure the supports that we're needing for each of those teachers is met. And each of those teachers are being met one-on-one each month to make sure those questions are answered on how we are preparing students post-secondary. The other piece of that is Achieve support that we are doing. Achieve is in its 2nd year of rollout. Achieve is the program that runs our special education, the IEP program. It's very cumbersome. It's very fun. It's definitely a work in progress, but we have worked through it together and definitely have supported each other through that. Alternate assessment support. Each of our buildings have an identified teacher that oversees alternate assessment. Alternate assessment is that 1% of special education who are receiving support where they would not be taking that ISASS testing, but they are either working through essential elements or the DLM, which are basically modified standards at the grade level to help see that support individually. The other piece that we talk about is CPI, which is crisis prevention training. That's when we talk about restraint, okay? That's when we talk about Chapter 103, restraint and seclusion. There's just a lot of laws, rules, and guidelines that we have to follow and abide by. Hannah Baker is our lead trainer in the district, and she's housed with me at Penn's. But we work throughout the whole district, making sure we have a consistent way that we're reporting to families and making sure that documentation is kept, because to me that is very, very important. Again, communication to parents, making sure that's consistent throughout. One of the pieces we'll be doing on March 3rd, there is a new Achieve family portal that is going to get launched next week, anywhere from Monday morning at 8 o'clock to Saturday night at 11:59 p.m., I heard. So that's going to be launched where families are going to be able to go on and see their child's data live. They'll be able to see the progress monitoring. They'll be able to see the live and active IEP that is there. So I will be opening up Penn's from 4 to 6 on March 3rd, along with Sarah Steamsma, who's also a parent in the district who works for Ask Resources, which supports families with children with disabilities. And we're going to join forces to help kind of have an open house kind of a feel for families to come in if they need support with Achieve or any questions they might have, from looking at waivers to disability rights, you name it, we'll talk about it. Transition meetings are coming up in May. That happens between Washington and Penn's in the middle school and high school. And we have those dates established already. One of the big pieces for special education that I think is something that we can hang our hat on is talking about the Numeracy Project. This is an initiative that started more in the Heartland AEA, where they had created a program where you're able to go in and do an online assessment to see where the skill level is that the kid is at. From there, you're able to use that as a diagnostic, as a progress monitoring tool, to be able to identify what skills we need to be working on so teachers knows what we need to be teaching. You can progress monitor, we can see that growth, and that's something that can go from Washington to Pence to the middle school to the high school. Yay, finally. Math has always kind of been that like mystery, like, ooh, what do you use? What did you find? And that doesn't really help when you're trying to have any kind of cohesion. Compliance support, obviously, one of the biggest pieces that we talk about a lot is the prior written notices. They always call those illegal binding documents that are attached to an IEP in a court of law that stands up against the IEP. And really what that's stating is if there's any major changes that happen within an IEP, that is the first legal document that a judge is going to look at. So that's a piece that we've worked on with the teachers to make sure those are written correctly, because that's what we're going to have to go stand behind. Also looking at IEP report cards. Those are progress monitoring reports that come out at each time we get a report card for a student. They also get that report card with their IEP. And also Medicaid billing, because that's a piece where, as a district, we want to make sure that we are maximizing our benefits that we have through Medicaid. And lastly, Camp Courageous. That's a big piece that special education has been a part of. We have wonderful people in each building that have helped with making sure that we support kids going to Camp Courageous in Monticello. And one of the biggest things that has happened recently is we'll be joining forces with the Ed Foundation to make sure that all the money goes through that nonprofit so we can continue to fund students going to Camp Courageous. Prior to this point, we had the ARC of Jefferson County that was able to support students within Jefferson County to go to Camp Courageous. When that dissolved last year, we weren't sure whether the money was going to be there, so we did our own fundraising. And then as the money was released from the ARC, they paid Camp Courageous monies that we should be able to go there for the next 3-4 years without having to pay any money, which is great. But in the meantime, last year, we'd already raised $20,000. So we have $20,000 that'll be going to the Ed Foundation. But one of the pieces that we wish to do as a special education team is to continue to fundraise every year, to have an annual event, which is our bingo night, which is coming up, and I have my next slide here, on March 7th, to continue to fund that. So that would be something that doesn't come out of any kind of expense for the district, but definitely through different donations and gifts that are given to our students at FCSD to keep going. And the biggest piece that we've talked about is continuing to make sure that there's equity of kids going throughout the district. That happens for all students within the buildings. So, and the last piece I wanted to highlight at the bottom of the last one is our special education identification. Right now as a district, we're at about a 14.5%. The state averages are right around 13% somewhere in there. So we're just a little over that, but that is definitely something that we keep our eye on and talk about throughout. So, questions?
I just wanted to clarify, that was great, thank you for all that information.
Yeah.
The video was super awesome to see. I feel like we need to make a version of it through Donovan too, to get out to parents. So when you said the way you're doing math now is breaking, like having each classroom kind of have a different set of students who are more at the same level.
We're doing it at third grade. That's how we responded there based on that data.
That's what I just understand, is that just, and this is the first year you guys are doing it?
Yeah, we've just had to look, I mean, every team, we've had to look at it a little differently. Everyone's making a response, but that was like a big drastic change that we've done that we haven't done in the past. And it's kind of interesting because since we did that a couple weeks ago, we've had a couple different IEP meetings, and parents have voluntarily said, my kid's really liking math right now. And it's just like that piece of like that confidence, you know, like when I'm surrounded with others that kind of struggle like me, it's easier to struggle versus, hey, my neighbor who's my best friend who's really cool, he's really good and I'm not. That's tough.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then I just had a question on that data page. If you
Yeah.
mind going back real quick. I was just trying to understand
Yep,
how the proficiency works in the second and third column.
yep,
I just might not be reading it right.
that's okay. Just gonna click. John, I'll let you take over. Thanks, Johnny.
There it is, yeah.
Yep.
So like, if we're moving from say third grade, 70 to 90% growth, but the fall is 55 and then 53 proficient in the winter. How does that, is that just, what am I not understanding, I guess, about how proficiency is decreasing, but we're showing,
Oh, yeah,
Greater
that's,
growth.
that's a great question, and this is a great question that Chris and I are trying to identify those kids. So let's say, for instance, I'm just gonna keep it simple. Let's say in the fall, your goal is 90, but in the winter, your goal is, let's say, 110, okay? I'm just gonna give you these random numbers here. But let's say in the fall, I was at a 90, then here, I come at 109. I'm not proficient, so I go down.
okay, so it's.
And what we saw with a lot is that
Each grade.
what we're having for an expected growth is 20, and we're looking at those kids that like barely met the mark. Like, who are those 19? Who are those 18? Who are those 17? And what are we doing? Because how do I hit this benchmark, but I didn't hit this benchmark? Yes.
Okay,
Those are the kids we're really thinking about. Because these are the kids down here that we really identify, and these are the kids we know that are, hey, we need to give them more.
yeah,
But there's these, I call them the bubble kids, that maybe they don't qualify for, let's say, they didn't qualify for title because they were proficient in the fall. Now all of a sudden we become not proficient? Like, how does that happen? And making sure what we're doing during the small group intervention time, where kids are in the classroom, what are we doing? It's personal.
yeah, exactly. And it's interesting to hear the math in third grade, because I know the way you guys approached reading, because I had 2 kids go through it, was very small group,
Yep.
personalized, and I feel like that was really beneficial. But
Well, and even
in math, do you do that in any way?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the pieces that we have that's probably different than any other building is when we have pull-out, it's small groups. So whether you're a kid going to special education, title, tag, if those 3 don't fit you, you're in a small group in your classroom. So there's small group rotations
For
that are
math.
going out throughout.
Okay.
So it's between like reading and math. So just like what we're talking about, looking at that number 55 to 53. Okay, so who of those kids that was at a 55, who were one of those kids that were proficient, who is not proficient now? What are we doing during that time? Yep,
Thank you.
yep.
So you're using those small groups to focus in on.
Yep, but then we also do MTSS at the end of the day, where we take all the data and we shake it up through the whole building. So we have a time where we do second grade, and we are more intentional of having more groups during that time, because we're dealing with a population of kids who have a more diverse need of like lower needs that we need to be able to meet in smaller groups. And then third and fourth grade, we actually blend those kids together and we look at that data. That happens at the end of the day. So we have about 20 minutes that we do it for second grade and 20 minutes for third and fourth grade at the end of the day. So what's really cool about that, though, is that we get third and fourth grade teachers working together, because really we're working on a lot of those same skills. Obviously, we have some groups that are a little bit lower, but it's gone pretty well. It's more ability-based.
Anything else? Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for your patience.
Angela, thank you.
All right, so next we have our committee reports. Each committee chair will share 2 to 3 minutes to update connected to the committee work. So we'll begin with policy and Mark Thornton.
Yes, policy, we met, whatever the date was. We're still going through a bunch of policies that we need to get cleaned up and sent through for approval for review. We went through a bunch that we're deleting. So it's either ones that were dealt with or put in back in COVID days that just no longer apply, or the ones that we found that aren't in ISAB's ones out to us that we thought are just extra that we could get rid of as well. So you'll see some of those coming up here as well. And then, again, we did talk about cell phone policy, but we haven't really moved any of that yet, so still in discussion. It's kind of high level what we know.
Great, thanks. Ty, you want to speak on strategic planning?
Sure. We got together, we talked some about student enrollment, focused on preschool a lot. We have the kindergarten roundup. It is March 24th, I think the date is. And so we're just kind of identifying, outreach to get people there and make sure we know what kind of numbers we have coming in next year. Marketing, a lot of the marketing was focused on the pre-K stuff, preschool. Getting people to the kindergarten roundup, making sure that people, know how to enroll in our school at the young age. We had the homeschool feedback from some current families. We went over that. We did we were talking about maybe a review feedback survey for parents at the end of the school year to get some feedback from parents also from the districts. We also talked about budget reduction, transfers, how that's, that kind of stuff is going. Some of our open positions, what we're doing to fill those. Facilities needs, we were talking about, bond feedback, the survey that's out, and some of the numbers, the early numbers that have come in for that. And then we talked about, work sessions and what kind of board learning we could do from IASB in the future, at our future work sessions. Did I miss anything? That was.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think today a lot of that kindergarten roundup stuff was sent out too, including the video.
Yep.
Finance?
Okay.
Eastburn?
So the Finance Committee held their regular meeting on Monday, February 10th. Members that were there were Ty, Megan, Evan, and Zach. First item of business was a briefing and financial review of the salary schedule for the district. This new teacher salary and extracurricular schedule aligns with the goal of proper resource allocation, particularly as it relates to wages and benefits. The new salary schedule will bring expenditure on our teachers to 63% of budget wages and benefits, which is closer to the goal of 65% and is up from 56%. So we were pleased with that we were beginning to meet our goal as far as that percent of budget for wages and benefits. The schedule will have only a slight effect on the expected UAB, which will drop slightly to 14.5%. The solvency ratio will be maintained at a robust 15%. Finally, this new schedule will give the district greater certainty in its expense structure with its longer term and an option to reopen the contract if the state SSA drops below 2% or goes above 4%. The committee also reviewed the issue of a 2-year contract with Alex Barr of Ottumwa for auditing services. Alex Barr meets all the requirements of sector expertise, professional qualifications, objectivity, and quality control for an auditor, and it was deemed the most qualified auditor for the price. A new RFP will be issued at the end of the contractual period to ensure that quality auditing services are maintained for the district. Additionally, the committee reviewed budget documents for public hearing and agreed to the levy rate without an increase to the income tax surcharge rate. And finally, the committee discussed the outstanding RFP for local depository services. Responses are due by May 1st, and the committee will make a decision after that date. And Ty Ward and I will recuse ourselves from that decision because of a conflict of interest. All depositories must be on the district's approved list per our policy 701.1. So that's what we did.
Thank you. Mark?
Yep. So facilities wise, it was pretty basic. We didn't really get too in depth with anything other than just the solar project that we've been discussing at Pence. We had multiple engineers there, so that pretty much took up the entire meeting. We had a couple engineers from Carly Nelson. We also had a couple engineers from a firm based out of Quincy, Illinois. I think it was called Design Mechanical. Is that right? And essentially, long story short, we've been talking about doing a solar system at Pence, and the primary driving factor behind that is we could see that as a possibility of essentially, freeing up a substantial amount of money in the general fund the next few years if we pay for a solar system there out of the PEPL fund. One of our biggest holdups right now with doing it is that if we pay for it out of the district's PEPL account, There's basically going to have to be a lot of design and engineering work that goes into that, and that's one of the things that comes up to vote tonight that we're going to have to decide on. And Megan and I have both talked about it, and I also spoke with Evan about it earlier. Of course, we'll have to discuss that once we get to the vote, but it did come in a very steep price that we would have to pay out of pocket either way if we decided to go through with the solar project or not. So we're going to have to decide on that, if that's going to be the right direction for the district or not. I have very mixed opinions. I want to see the solar project come through, but that's a pretty steep engineering fee that we'll have to talk, and we'll talk to Carly Nelson about it later. The next thing that we talked about was just technology and security. Basically, Zach had mentioned that they would like to come up with some type of system, just from a technology and security standpoint, about documenting whenever there's a breach in security or anything like that. So I think they're going to get a system in place when it comes to that. And then as far as projects go, we primarily just talked about the new gym floor, which will likely cost around $45,000, which I believe also comes to a vote tonight. So we can discuss all that when that comes to bid. But that pretty much took up the entire meeting, and Deborah was there with me, and then Evan and Zach, and you guys can, if I missed anything, you're more than welcome to share. So
Great, thank you. HR negotiations, I don't know if Mark, you wanna take
Yeah.
any of this since you,
Yeah, we've been just going with the joint committee. So we've had a couple more of those meetings, and I think we'll see the results of that coming forward. So I think everybody from the school board to administration to the committee themselves have felt like it's been a great process. So I wasn't part of this last year, so to me it was brand new, but I think everybody's stated how improved it has been from previous years. So that's awesome to hear, and I think we'll see the results of that from some of the stuff later on. And I'm sure Zach will have more to present on it later. So that's kind of what we've been doing so far, is getting through that and making sure we get that approved.
great, thank you. All right, let's move along to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
second.
Dave and Mark Porter. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, up next we have public participation.
Not aware of any.
Do we have any public feedback tonight? Okay, so we'll move along to new business. 7.1, do I hear a motion to set a public hearing on March 24th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. for the fiscal year 26 proposed property tax levy?
Move. So moved.
Dave
Second.
and Ty? Any discussion?
This is just setting the public hearing for it.
Yep.
Correct. Yep.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, do I hear a motion to set a public hearing on April 21st, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the Fairfield Community School District room on the proposed fiscal year 26 budget?
So moved.
Dave
Second.
and Ty again. Any discussion here? Just again, setting a hearing. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do I hear another motion do I hear a motion to set a public hearing on March 24th at 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the FCSD Community School District Boardroom on the Fairfield High School lighting project?
So moved.
Second.
Mark and Mark. Any discussion here?
So just out of curiosity, why do we have to have a public hearing for this?
Yeah, so when we do a big public bid process for construction, they have to have the opportunity to speak about the bid that we're presenting for approval at a later date. It's the simplest way to.
Is there a dollar threshold that goes by, or?
Anytime we have engineers involved above 139, we should be having public hearings for bidding. $139,000, not $139.
Any other discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do I hear a motion to approve the fiscal year 26 school calendar with 173 days and the fiscal year 27 school calendar with 174 days as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Deborah and Mark Porter. Any discussion here? Everyone taking a look?
So this is approving, correct? And then is this very similar to what we had last year then, or is there any major differences that we need to be aware of, or?
Yeah, the major differences would be moving from 2 o'clock to 1:30 on Fridays.
Yep.
Not using the Fridays for as many different things. We would use those for more collaborative learning time team meetings. That would be driven by those teams and the work that they need to do, kind of like Angela was speaking to, connected to our professional learning community mindset. So that would be a little bit of a shift. And then we've got a couple days that would be flex work days for teachers. So right now, currently when we have elementary conferences, secondary has professional learning, we're gonna have a day where they'll have more of a just dedicated work day. They can do that where they need to work to be the most productive, whether that's at school or otherwise. They'll each have one of those, elementary and secondary. And then another tweak would be with TQ. Instead of having two full TQ days, we'll have one that the TQ committee plans, and then the others will be up for teachers to apply to go to a conference. They'd be able to have a sub cover them for that day, and their conference attendance or workshop or whatever might be paid for through TQ funds. So, yep.
Now, is there a committee organized to kind of help put this together, or do you guys just basically go with the same format that we had last year and go with it, or?
For the most part, I just tweaked some things and then brought labor management, and then another group I shared it with the board, a month and a half ago or whatever, and got feedback, made some tweaks. One of those was Good Friday. There was a group that felt like Good Friday should be off for kids, and we have PD that day, but it'll be a day where there's no student attendance. So.
This is a process that got really drug out last year, so I just want to make sure that,
Yeah, and I've received some feedback from a couple parents, nothing negative, mainly don't go to a 4-day week, was what I heard from them. And then just the 2-year calendar, I think, just provides a lot of planning opportunities, and then every year we'd come back around this time to approve another 1-year calendar, but it's 2 years out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, all in favor of approving these school calendars as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 7.5, board policies for review. Do I hear a motion to approve the board policies at the second reading?
Moved.
Second.
Christie and Porter. Any discussion? Again, these are, I think, what Mark was saying were a lot of board-related policies. Just some ethics stuff that's swapping one IASB thing in for another. Am I remembering the right? I'm calling off the top of my head, but any discussion?
I just had one request. I noticed that a lot of these are handwritten kind of changes. If we could get those typed just so I can read them a little bit better, that would be awesome.
Okay, yeah,
Some of them were just a little bit hard to read, and I was trying to figure out what they said.
that's totally fair. Good, we can do that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do I hear a motion to approve board policies at the first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Deborah and Dave. So there's 3 different PDFs here. Any discussion on any of these? All right.
Yeah, like what I mentioned earlier.
Is what you mentioned earlier, yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And now do I hear a motion to waive a second reading on policy 102.E2?
So moved.
Second.
Mark Porter and Dave. This is really just a name change, and we're trying to get this process through so that it can be posted.
Yeah, this is basically, there's staff that's not here anymore, his name in this policy, so we're removing it and basically removing all the names, so we don't have to come back to it. We were referencing a title, and then we'll have that title correlation on the site somewhere, so.
When we brought that up before, I thought we were told that legally we had to have the name in there, so we had to do it that way, cause yeah, it makes no sense to put the name in there, into our policies like that. I think this is a good change, but I just wanna make sure this is still kosher with what we need to do.
We have to have it publicized, but we publicize it on our job descriptions now, and we publicize it in our employee handbook as well.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, do I hear a motion to approve, this is approval of capital improvement bids for fiscal year 26, a motion to approve the winning bid as presented for the gym floor.
So moved.
Second.
Mark and Deborah. I guess we should have some discussion on this.
So how did you guys come to the determination that this was our firm to use for the gym floor?
There's 3 different bids or 2 different bids here?
There's 3.
3.
We got 3 bids back. This was the cheapest bid with the best reviews from neighboring superintendents and reference checks. So we took low bid and highest review for the recommendation.
Is the court designed at this point then?
We've got a couple ideas, but we'll get some input from different stakeholders and then finalize it, but we've got a couple that have been out there, yep.
What all stakeholders will you use to come up with that design?
Probably just coaches and administrators. I don't know if we'll have anybody else that'll really weigh in too much, cause when you get a bunch of people in a decision like that, it just muddies it pretty significantly,
Yeah.
so. Yep.
And this will take place during,
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
It'll either be the week leading up to Dead Week and Dead Week, so that last part of July, or it would be next spring break, depending on whether or not we can get the right team here and get it secured. But I think we're at timeline wise, we're in an okay spot to try to get it done this summer.
When was the last time we did the previous gym floor, and how often do we need to do this?
Oh, about every 10 years you have to do a complete strip all the way down and just redo all of it. But annually we
Jeff said it was his first or second year, so it's been at least 12 or 13 years.
I mean, I'm all for doing it. I'm just curious, what was the deciding factor on just doing just pure age or just
pure age, aesthetics,
Yeah, we had
quality to
done
maintain.
the other pieces in the gym from a paint perspective and brightening it up that way, more orange and black and gray. This will be another piece that makes it look better.
and then will we have like a maintenance plan for our guys to,
Historically, our guys have done it. This
right?
outfit actually has like a service where they'll come and do it. I don't know from a cost standpoint if it's actually cheaper when it's all said and done though. So right now we're not planning to do that. It'll be our guys, but they do have an option where they come and do that every year too.
And that, our guys have been sort of maintaining it
Correct.
annually with
correct?
polishing, or not
Yeah.
polishing, but
Yeah.
buffing or whatever it
Yep.
is, yeah, okay. Okay, any other discussion? Questions? Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alright, do I hear a motion to approve changing the date of the regular meeting of the Fairfield Community School District Board of Directors from March 17th to March 10th? And do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Christy and Mark Thornton. Any discussion? I know we're doing this because it falls during spring break. So I think- All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the tentative agreement memorandum of understanding with the FCEA?
So moved.
Second.
Deborah and Ty? Any discussion?
So what exactly is this?
Yeah, so this is the new salary schedule connected to the current contract.
Yep.
And then we amended the MOU to reflect what's gonna happen next year that we're gonna open up to talk through. So For us, it provides 2 phases. We're prioritizing those with 15 years and up. We gave the union, I think, 3 or 4 different options to look at with a pot of money, and that's where the union landed, and we're going to be able to do that even though it costs us a little bit more. It also has, after those 2 phases, it has a flat raise based on the base. That, again, for us, just allows us to budget a lot more intentionally out. And then we also in the MOU had all of our extra service contracts up next year for placement, identifying where we might switch or change some of those. And we've really prioritized upping the amount that those extra service contracts are going to pay out to those people, whether it's a head coach or an FBLA sponsor or whatever, so we can increase the base it's calculated off. Because in the past, there was kind of an arbitrary, it was like 75% of the base is what was used to generate that number. We just thought if we wanted to be the best or, you know, pay the most for these things in Southeast Iowa, we're gonna up that. So we went up 12.5% next year, and then it'll be roughly $3,000 the next 2 years after that each year, on the base, so.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do I hear a motion to approve the fiscal year 26 administrator director contracts as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mark Porter and Dave. Any questions here? There's a note. I did want to just mention that this doesn't include our superintendent's contract, so I think we need to establish a timeline just for when we want to kind of offer Zach another formal evaluation. I'm thinking maybe April, so that we can then provide a contract at that point. But I know maybe, you know, Ty and Mark, you guys have been doing this longer. I don't know what your process was before that.
I mean, whenever you guys see fit here, you know, obviously before the end of the year, we'll wanna do it, so, I don't know, what do you think, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, whatever you wanna talk about, that's cool.
Schedule.
Usually your contract's what, a 3-year rolling or somewhere around there, so this would just be the financial portion of it or whatever.
Yeah, maybe following the review.
Yep.
Does that sound good?
I think there's something in this contract that you have to give them an evaluation before May every year.
Yeah.
I think that's something we
So if we
negotiate, so we probably need to set it for April at the latest, if you guys are ready by then, but.
Yeah, April, at the board meeting, following the board meeting, or what,
we
it
wanna
have to be
set that.
prior?
It's usually a closed session,
Right,
And with the administrator director contracts, that does not include the Washington principal, correct? So will we just take care of that separately next month, I take it, or?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The goal would be to have that on the 10th board meeting.
Yep.
We're interviewing finalists on March 6th, make an announcement hopefully on the 7th. Have it on the board agenda for the 10th.
Can you share how many candidates that we've had?
Yeah, I've got that in my soup update. We've got 15 so far.
Okay, great.
okay, any other questions about these admin contracts, director contracts? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the fiscal year 26 professional services contracts as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Ty and Christie, any discussion here? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the solar proposal letter as presented?
So moved. Second, whatever.
Ty and Porter?
Whatever.
All right, so let's have some discussion here.
Yeah, I just want to give some clarity on the documents you have. You had this one already electronically. It had the breakdown of some of the costs. I followed up with a communication in my memo yesterday to you guys, breaking it down even more. But then the second standalone was, if you look under the 400 administrative and legal, the one that's on the back of this page, it had the roof as part of that 30% discount, which it can't be. And so this one is an accurate reflection of just the solar 30% of 191,331. So that's why the numbers are bigger on the bottom in the standalone single breakdown. And I just asked Chris, he was willing to come over here and answer any questions or clarify anything that you needed clarity around connected to this, because it is expensive. I know we talked about maybe getting some other construction management firms to give us a bid as well in regards to what we would have to spend no matter what to get the information that we need. This isn't just, we can bring people in to give us, I mean, this is a full-blown, if we're gonna do this the way that, you know, I think we should if we wanna move forward with this, so.
I guess I just had a question about the roof and making a determination of whether we have to really tear it back and re-insulate, because I know that wasn't really part of the plan
So I mean,
until,
or go ahead.
yeah, no, that's it. That's one of my questions.
Well, what I was getting ready to say is, so I mean, 2.1 to 2.7 million was drastically higher than what we were looking at for a cost of project. So how did we come to that conclusion with those numbers?
You want me to just give you kind of a summary on
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Please
Is that
come.
helpful?
Yeah, please come up and just share with us.
So, as Mark said, on the 7th, we came up, met with the facilities committee and about the project, and the direction that we got from the facilities committee was to put as much solar capacity on the roof as would fit, but not to put any solar on the ground at this point. Just try and preserve as much space for the kids to play on as possible. And then what we talked about was to replace, at that point, we were thinking that the 30% of credit would apply. And if that was the case, let's put an entirely new roof system on the building, including new insulation to increase the R value, improve the thermal performance of the building. And then to plan for this summer of 2025, and in a fall construction schedule on that. So we followed up with that discussion with a design proposal. And as a public entity, you guys probably all know this, but any projects that are over $206,000, last year was $196,000, this year they bumped it to $206,000. Any public improvement over $206,000 has to be fully designed, it has to be competitively bid, publicly bid. Which this project would certainly fall in that category. Needs to be designed by licensed engineers and architects. Needs to be publicly advertised, submitted to authority having jurisdiction, which is going to be the state in this case. And then with that process, the bids would have to be awarded to the lowest price, responsible and responsive bidder. The alternative to that process would be to go through the power purchase agreement, which I think you guys are probably familiar with that, but essentially it's a developer that would own the system and lease the power back to the school district. And because that developer would be a private entity, you could forego the public bidding process for the work. So really the two options are public bidding process, the district owns it, or power purchase agreement, which would bypass the public bidding, but then the district wouldn't own it, it'd get essentially leased back to the district.
And just to clarify though, with the low bid, we don't legally have to go with the low bid if there's rationale and reasoning to go with someone else because of something that we found or see in that,
Yes,
correct?
that would be the responsive part of that, yeah.
Okay.
And that's part of what we would help you with, is checking references. You mentioned that on the gym floor recoding process.
Now, Chris, if we went through the power purchase agreement, we wouldn't necessarily technically have to go through all this extra engineering expense, correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
Essentially, that package through a power purchase could be design build.
Yep.
Where the solar contractor could do the design, a roofer could do the design, and you wouldn't have to stamp it.
Mm-hmm.
There still would be some design done, but maybe a little bit less formal design. So our proposal for the design and carrying this through the bidding process, or get to the bidding process, was $95,900. But I want to explain kind of how we arrived at those numbers, because some of them may or may not apply if we don't replace the whole roof. So of that, $35,500 is to design the roofing system. and thinking that that would increase the roof insulation thickness, which would change your edge condition because it'd get tall, the building would get taller with that. So it'd be new metal, designing new metal all the way around the perimeter of the building. 45,000 is for electrical design. That's obviously designing the solar. It would be designing any upgrades to the building electrical infrastructure to support that solar. And then we would need to evaluate the Alliant utility transformer to see if it was adequate for that solar. And then 2,400 would be to review the existing roof structure to determine if it was adequate to support the weight of the solar panels being on the roof. So that's 2,400 to evaluate it. We did not include any design to reinforce the structure of the roof if it wasn't adequate, because we don't know how much that's gonna be. Is it a small area, is it a large area? Valuation 2,400, if we have to engineer some reinforcements to the roof, that would be something we'd have to, figure up the cost of that and talk about that later. And then all of those three, by the way, are consultants. That's not actually us doing that. Our portion is 13,000. That would be writing specifications, preparing a bid form, coordinating with those consultants, drafting contracts that would be published in the bidding documents, attending meetings, that type of stuff. Our portion is all labor. It's time spent on the project is really what it is.
So that firm that was here last time, or at the facilities meeting or whatever, are those first three segments, is that basically their billing then? or-
They would be the 45,000.
The 45,000.
The 35,000, we did not have at that meeting. We had planned on using SVPA Architects. They're out of Des Moines. We've worked with them a lot. We actually just, in the last week or two, bid a re-roofing project for Shenandoah School District, Southwest Iowa, where SVPA designed that re-roofing project. So moving forward, as Mark pointed out, yes, the 95,900 is a lot of money. My recommendation would be to start with evaluating the roof structure. Because honestly, if the roof won't support those solar panels, it's probably gonna be too costly to reinforce the roof to do that. So my recommendation would be to move forward with the 2,400 or 2,400 to evaluate the roof structure. We may also wanna go up and take asbestos samples on the roof and in the ceiling just to determine if there was significant asbestos above the roof. Because you would want to know that as well. The downside of only doing those pieces now is that means that the design for the roofing, the design for the electrical would get put on hold until we have that information for you. And that may make it difficult to get this bid out and start this summer, just because the design would get pushed back, the bidding would get pushed back. And at some point, a lot of schools do summertime construction, so the contractor network can get busy for the summer. One thing we didn't talk about is ideally the roofing would take place this summer, but the solar could take place during the school year. People could be up on the roof, putting solar panels on during the school year, and that wouldn't hurt anything, I don't think, anyway.
Is asbestos an issue only if we do the bigger roofing project?
If you disturb it, yes.
Okay, but if we're just putting a new,
If it's a new membrane, should be okay.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
We talked about this, but had a call last Thursday or Friday, I believe, with a potential consultant that might be an asset to the district to help get this 30% credit back. And they pointed out that they did not think that the roofing would be part of this 30% credit. So again, that may change the strategy. I think it probably does make sense to put a new membrane on it, because it's gonna be hard to roof this building after it's completely filled up with solar. But maybe you don't put new insulation and metal and everything else on it. That would drastically increase the life of the roof. May not improve the thermal performance of it.
If we don't do the solar project, do you think the roof's still sufficient for 5 or 10 years yet, or have you? I mean,
I think so. You know, I walked around on the roof and I can't say I studied it in great detail as far as assessing the condition. I believe that a portion of the roof was replaced with a geothermal project, which had been 10-ish years ago.
because I guess what I'm getting at is if we're gonna do the roof specifically for the solar project, that changes the payback dramatically, you know, from what we were originally looking at. And that changes the economics and whether or not it's a feasible project a lot, which we could of course look differently and look at a ground mount system or whatever, but we have to obviously find the right location for it and hope it doesn't get in the way of the school, you know, cause we don't wanna do that, so.
Yeah. Based on what I saw, I would say that the roof has some life left in it. 5-7 years would be my guess, on that. But 5 or 7 years when it's got solar on it would, you'd be crazy not to replace it now, I think, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then our proposal is that if bids come in, the district decides to move forward with the work, we would have a fee of 6% of the cost of the roofing work, the cost of the solar work. And then just our hourly rates, which are in the proposal to manage the work. We were thinking that we would not have somebody on site full-time during the work. I don't think the project would warrant that. So Cindy, who's one of our project managers, she was at the facility meeting, would stop by once a week approximately just to check on the status, the progress of the project, make sure everything was going well, and then to review the pay applications, so. Any questions?
What size of a kilowatt installation, kind of range are we looking at?
I think the ballpark to get it on the.
270 to 403 or 430 or something?
270 to
450
430?
would max out, I think,
450.
the usage. We don't have space for that. But that would be 100% usage. So I think if we
But that's
just
not what could fit
want
on our
roof only, it's 200 to 250 maybe kilowatts.
200 to 250?
On the roof?
It depends on if we use the entire roof. If some of it's in shade, we can't use it. If
I think we can get a lot more up there than what,
307 kilowatts on the low end is what it said.
yeah, I think it's a lot more than
Yeah.
what the
Okay.
other company had thought, but that it's also more roof
Yeah.
than was planned.
307.
When you're talking about increasing the R value, what do you think the R value is right now and how much would it increase?
It looked to me like, looking at some of the existing drawings, and I don't know if it's been changed in the last, how old is Penn's, 70 years old? I don't know how old it is. It could have been changed since the original drawings, but it looks to me like there's only 1 inch of insulation throughout a lot of that roof, which I don't know what the insulation is, but that's, an R6. And a new roof today would be an R30. So it's significant. That's if you wanted to meet current code, which I would think would make sense if you're redoing everything right now.
And then my last question is, Evan, if we did a PPA, like he mentioned, those monthly payments, would that come out of the general fund or PEPAL?
That would be how it's structured, how it works with
General
investor.
fund. Oh, but you're saying we would make a utility payment out of the general fund. It
Our
would
utility
no
payment
longer
comes
come out
the
of,
general fund.
we don't get the advantage of save
The
fund.
Yeah,
leases have to
so-
get paid for out of debt service, so there'd be a transfer out of either save or PEPAL on an annual basis, so we lease to own or however it's set up out of debt service.
So we wouldn't see the savings out of the general on that one.
Right, as far as, unless
If we do the
something-
projects completely out of PEPAL, then basically we're prepaying for electricity out of PEPAL, and then we're easing our general fund a little bit, whatever that is per year.
Yeah, I mean, we pay $95,000 a year in electric bill at Patents,
Yeah.
so whatever 60% reduction or whatever this roof amount would do would be.
That to me takes PPA off the board, because I think that one of the main objectives of this should be to open up funds in our general fund.
But eventually it still would though after, with the power purchase agreement, it's just whenever you finally officially purchase it, then at that point it would.
Right. Which at this price would be 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, then we gotta think about, long-term planning and visioning around buildings and one campus, and how, is that gonna be 20 years from now? I mean, are we gonna still have that building in a functional way, or is it gonna be, are we gonna continue to try to? So I think all of those are discussions to have.
So how many more years would the 30% credit be in effect? Is that just until 2030 or is it
I don't actually know, it's part of that inflation
2032.
protection.
2032? Okay, and our roof is good for another handful of years
It was on our facilities plan, the Pence roof was on the plan for next year.
next year.
We bumped it up to this year and swapped it out with the high school section, just based on kind of the discussions that took place in the facilities committee 2 months ago.
So given that the R factor is so poor, it can't,
I could be wrong on that, I'm looking at drawings that are, again, 70 years old.
okay.
That building's probably been re-roofed
But-
2, maybe 3 times since then. It's possible that more insulation's been added since then.
So, I mean, I would like to know if we could improve the insulation, how much would we save in the general fund right away by spending just nickels on insulation and postponing this decision until even next year? Because we have, I mean, of course we want to reduce our expenses coming out of the general fund to pay utilities. But
Up in our R value would do that also.
it would, it could, I mean, I'm sorry, guys, this is just could cut it in half. I mean,
Is there a way to have someone come out with some equipment and test how much heat is transferring through and?
Well, that's, I think it would be wise to have, and this would happen, to do some roof cores where you drill holes in the roof to see how much insulation, the condition of the insulation. That would obviously answer the question, how thick it is. It certainly could be thicker than what we know it to be.
but our heat isn't electric, our heat is, it's geothermal. So how much, I mean, maybe it's not even,
Geothermal's electric,
oh, is it?
It is, yeah.
All right.
usually, yeah.
It's electric, you use the
Okay.
temperature of the ground to supplement that.
Got it. So lights wouldn't change with the heating, I mean, you know, the heating is just crazy. The other concern I have is this sort of unknown about what net metering benefits we would have. Obviously, net metering is available. I called Alliant, I've gone online, you know, and it's still, so the answer is how much we would save is still vague, no matter how many people I call. And so, I don't know if at the end of the engineering, if we would be satisfying that curiosity about what will we get out of this? We know what we'll put into it, but we need to know what we're gonna get out of it.
Why can't we get a
Exactly.
definitive answer from Alliant on how the net metering is going to work? Because I mean, we can't move forward until we know exactly how that works. Because that makes a whole difference in the savings, depending on.
You had some numbers.
I guess I don't understand why we don't, I mean, this building, as far as I know, is on like a small commercial rate, which is different than like the high school, which is on a larger commercial rate, which has, peak demand charges, meaning you have to pay this extra fee, which we're, you know, technically we probably should have Pence on that, but we don't, which is good for solar because we can just meter it all the way down with usage 100%. There's no peak charge to get rid of. So as far as my understanding is, which is, you know, a layperson, but we can just completely wipe it out, although there are certain months where it won't completely wipe out, but we can build a credit up and then it'll
Balance out.
balance out. Does
So
that sound?
you do think we have that answer, and that's what I was looking for. So.
That's how my residential Alliant is too. What, some months we overproduce and then the other months we use those.
That was the
credits
advantage of the high school, or sorry, Pence or Washington over the high school, was because we're still on this rate. Because it gets really complicated. You have to get battery systems and whatnot to deal with peak demand if you're in the high school rate. So I do think, to whatever degree we build a solar system, you know, if it's a 60% or 100%, you know, that's the amount that will. But then also when you know, if you get the engineer, you know, they should hopefully in the RFP put in place monitoring to make sure that we're getting what they say we're supposed to get, and if not, like what's going on with the system. I think that can also be part of what we request.
So I think the big thing for moving forward is, are we going to do the roof either way in the next 2 years then? Evan?
So it was on the 26, 27 plan
Yeah.
for Pens.
So the roof was gonna get done either way, and how much money were we gonna wrap up in that, or?
140? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I mean, he was just doing just membrane.
110.
110.
But you guys are looking at that a lot higher than that, correct?
Yes, but the 110 would be, that would just be a membrane.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from, but I'm sure it's just
That's
a
what it was.
membrane, that's it.
Yeah.
Just membrane.
And what you're.
Whereas ours would be, you know, added wood blocking around the perimeter, new sheet metal, new insulation, new membrane. Basically take it all the way down to the steel roof deck, and everything above that would be new.
We kinda need to figure out exactly what additional, total additional that we would be doing, specifically for the solar to get a true payback before we determine to go through, and that's why I'm not 100% sure if we should commit to any big engineering fees at this point in time until we get an accurate picture of that, and then we can determine that forward, cause I'm all for doing the solar, but I was all for doing the solar with the original bidded project that we saw from Ideal. Obviously, this is a much larger dollar amount.
Well, I don't think the solar cost is going to change. I think, what we're talking about now is maybe a larger system,
Yep,
which is obviously gonna cost more, but it should also save more.
yep.
And it's just a question of the roof, which I think what I'm hearing, and I think what my recommendation would be, is if you can't get the 30% credit, that I probably would not do the full-blown roof. You could evaluate the energy savings, but I don't know if that'd pay for itself. And the roof cores will help answer that question.
And that's part of the $2,400, or that would be in addition to the $2,400?
That was, part of the 35,000.
35,000, okay.
I mean, and it might be that the gymnasium roof or is different than the
Right.
other roof.
Oh, they're all different,
Yeah,
I'm sure of
yeah.
that, cause there's several, iterations of buildings there.
But if we wanna just do the structural analysis as a step to determine whether this building can even hold solar, I mean,
$2,400.
does that seem like an appropriate step?
If we agree to just the $2,400, I think that's manageable, yes, but it's a big difference between
And then
that
just some,
Yeah,
I mean, cause
95,000.
if it's not feasible, then
And that's something we can just do
Conversation
without
goes
a board
away.
vote too, right? Yeah. 'cause
What's
that's-
that 1,000?
So if we vote this down, you guys can just go ahead and do that.
I think that's fair. And I guess this question would be for Angela. I mean, yard wise out there, do you guys utilize all the ground space there? Would there be space there for a ground mount system, or do you think that would just impede in you guys' day too much?
I can let Zach poll the students and see what they think about that, but,
Well,
yeah.
for the most part, yeah, we use all, there would be some corners, I would say probably in the southwest corner that might be better fit. I know there's some well system over there as well, but that would get into our walking track, but I also could look at, I call like the far south end where the fence kind of beats up there with like Fillmore and Sixth Street, that might be another area that would probably be a pretty green space that would be out of the way of kids.
Northwest or southwest?
South.
Okay. Josh Wiley had pointed out the northwest corner, thinking in his mind that might be the best place to put it, but he obviously didn't talk to you, so.
And if we wanted some elaborate, like awning system at the entryway and covered parking spaces, would that be in the $33,000, $35,000 design, electrical engineer design fee, or?
We talked about,
Yeah.
conceptually, putting covered parking with solar panels across, the front, and then potentially, some green space, but we didn't
Yeah.
really consider that at all, because that's not what the direction of the facilities committee was.
Okay. I know the further you get away, obviously, from where you're connecting, it's more complicated and more expensive, so.
Yeah, Costco. And obviously, the covered parking is gonna
Is
be a
more,
lot
yeah.
more money per kilowatt than roof mounted.
Well, naturally, when we brought up the rough space, it was just, to make sure we weren't getting in the way of the buildings, but obviously that's gonna make this cost dramatically higher. I mean, if we had ground mount space, then the engineering fees would be dramatically less, right?
Well, you certainly wouldn't have the roofing related,
Yep.
and the electrical would probably be similar. I think one way or the other, you're gonna have to look at the building infrastructure to see if it will take that, and hopefully it will, cause it's pretty new. It was replaced with the geothermal project.
So if we did a power purchase agreement and we did a roof mount or whatever, would that group have to have all these design fees with the roof as well? I mean, legally, or?
Well, there would have to be some design. It wouldn't need to be, part of this, formal design is dotting your i's, crossing your t's for the bidding process. Cause when someone turns in a bid, they literally write down a price, and it's per plan and spec. It's not a proposal letter where they can say, I've included this, I've included that, and you sort through it. It's per plans and spec, one price, that's all they write down, that and the name of their company. So a lot of the engineering is just, dotting i's, crossing t's, making sure it's, not something that someone's gonna change order it to death. And you don't really have that problem when, essentially it's a design build with a power purchase agreement, because they know what the performance specs are, and but I think, the electrical infrastructure is where it's gonna get more complicated. Studying the electric gear and making sure that that's able to take that kind of load.
Has this electrical design firm done a lot of solar that you'd be partnering with, or?
I don't know about a lot, but, several projects, yes. And they're a firm we've worked with quite a bit. They do, plumbing, HVAC, and, electrical design. And, we know them well, we work with them a lot, but I had called, Moorfeld Solar and asked them who they see on public projects like this, designing those systems, and they were one of the firms that they mentioned that they'd seen on a couple, so.
You asked that because solar electrical engineering is
Well, I asked.
is a specialized.
Yeah, I mean, you can be an electrical engineer and do all sorts of different projects, but solar, there's specific modules, and it's, just based on, personal, my husband does this for a living, so I won't be voting on any of this, but, he's in charge of all of these interconnections. He's not an engineer, but he knows, he's been doing it for 15 years, so he knows extensively and he's run into bids where an engineer has called things out, but they've had to go a different route because those are older modules. So I just want to make sure whoever we go with for the electrical engineer is someone who's doing a lot of solar, and they're not just an electrical engineering firm, I guess. So,
Yeah,
I completely
that makes
agree with that.
sense.
yeah.
I think some of it is just the other plans. I mean, go back to like the middle school or whatever we do as a one campus goal or that vision of partially that at some point, like what does that fit into this big picture? And I think it's almost too soon to know what that's gonna look like to go that big. I don't know.
Right, so we could do a smaller project and offset a smaller percentage if we felt like the price was getting too high, but I guess, do you feel like the design fee would shift if we did a smaller project, or is it all kind of obviously the 6% would shift based on the cost?
That would be our portion, and obviously that would change. The electrical design, I don't know, my gut feel is it wouldn't be a lot different if it was a 200 or a 3, whatever you said, Zach, it was 308 or 3. It probably wouldn't be a lot different, cause it's the same amount of work really to design it.
I mean, we probably wanna max out what we can do on a roof if we're going into it, yeah.
And until we insulate it to R30, we won't know what that will be. I mean, it could be less than 307.
Any other?
Is there any way to get information about when the roof was done last? Like, do we have that information around? Obviously, none of us
the membrane or the actual?
Well, Wiley has all that information. Or at least information stating when it should be replaced. That's how we made our plan.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got all that information, and I don't know, how often you guys are having service calls with roof leaks and that type of information, so. There's several different kinds of roofs up there,
Did you say a lot?
a lot.
Is that a ton at the middle school?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm confused. So we, as I remember, my notes say that we were looking at a $65,000 energy savings out of the general fund for a solar project.
Yep.
So with these numbers right now, a $1.5 million solar project, the payback period's almost 23 years. It's not, that, and,
Those numbers have changed a lot from what we were originally looking at. So.
Well, I don't know that the number that you're evaluating has changed a lot. It's the other stuff that I think is totally unrelated. I mean, the roof doesn't have anything to do with the payback of the solar, right?
right, I'm just taking the solar.
And the solar is fairly close. Zach, I didn't bring that email that I sent you the other day. I failed to print that off. But
This one, here you go.
There's a lot of
know if this is
contingency
the right-
built into this, so how often I mean, it's just 10% construction contingency. It's hard, like, those numbers get really big on a
There
bigger
is
system.
contingencies in there, and just to be clear, the contingency's not ours, it's just a making sure,
So if,
that there's not
You're talking about
surprises.
this right here?
So if I'm reading this right, which I probably got, the first bid is just for the roof and solar panel is 1.5 million, and the next one is 1.9. And at $65,000, that's 23 years and 29 years. That's way too long. Way too long. It's just indicating that it's a way too expensive project.
Yeah, I don't think 65 was what, it was like 80 or 90.
So the total electric cost was 95,000, and then we did 100%. If we got 100% solar initially, it would have been 95,000. Then we did 60% because we were trying to get it scaled down to what the roof could actually fit, which is where that 60 to 65 kind of came from.
Gotcha.
But that's not the number though with what Chris was looking at with covering the whole roof. to get up
Correct.
to
So
that
this is
307.
before we met with.
So it'd probably be somewhere in between that day, between that 65 and 95.
Okay, even then, it's still gonna be over 20
It's a lot of years, yeah.
It's a lot of years, and to me, that's too expensive.
When we were originally talking about, we were just basically looking at Ideal's bid, which basically they were looking at like a 9 or 10 year payback, but then by the time we look at a 30% federal tax credit, or with the school works as a direct payment, it was going to get down to about a 6 year payback. But again, like I said, we're looking at tons of other factors now.
Yeah.
It has made it drastically more expensive, primarily because we just don't have a lot of ground space there. And a lot of it's going to have to be done on the roof. And when Ideal put together the roof amounts, they weren't taking any type of engineering fees or, structural enforcement into consideration, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the solar's, I found the number here that I was looking for. The solar itself is, $584,000
Exactly.
is what it was. The roof and, potential electrical upgrades to the infrastructure in the building was 910,000.
So
Okay.
what
And
is,
a large portion of that may not be required if you can't get the 30%. Probably just want to put the new membrane on it, which is in line with the 120 or whatever you guys had, I would think.
Oh, it's like 10 cents on the dollar then.
You what?
It's like 10 cents on the dollar for just the new roof, no extra structural support for the roof and
Right.
just the membrane.
Yeah, they get you a new membrane. It wouldn't get you better thermal improvements in the building.
So it sounds like, we need to see if it's structurally strong enough for solar. We need to know what our R factor is. And then we'll have enough to make a decision at that point.
I think that $24 just inspecting the roof structure, and then we can just knock this down tonight, but then just keep re-examining moving forward. I don't think it's dead. The project's dead at this point, but we need to figure out a lot more before we commit to a $95,000 engineering
I
bill.
get that. Yeah.
the line 202 and 203, the contingencies? How do we get that number? Why is it?
You may not need them at all.
I mean, so that would bring the cost down $400,000.
It would, about 400,000,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
but you know, I mean, anytime you're doing any type of project, it's gonna be 20% more than what we planned it to be.
I mean, unless you say no change orders on your
Well,
RFP.
there's two reasons for
Can't,
those,
it doesn't happen in this.
there's two reasons for the contingencies. One is what are we not thinking about right now that could come up?
Sure.
Two is what market conditions can change between now and then. Potential tariffs.
Cares.
I think most solar panels come from China, I think. So conditions can change
Sure.
between now and then, and that's what the bid contingency is. The design contingency is intended to be, what are we not thinking about right now?
That's just, it's.
But we may not need 'em.
75% increase on the cost of the project, it's
Yeah.
huge.
It is. Yeah, you may not need those at all.
I mean, that's why, Dave, that it seems like this isn't a good payback, cause we're adding a really great cushion, which is nice to feel confident, but it's so much that it's
I would just
totally
take,
deterring the
I would
project.
just taken line 201. I wasn't even taking contingencies. And applying
583,
the 201,
oh,
one
The
1,493,870.
okay,
and I was
I'm on
applying
February
55
13th document.
The 65,000, and I'm coming up with almost 23 years.
The 13th is the one you should be looking at. The February 12th document is the old one. 13th is the one I said, the single standalone. So do you have that one?
That,
It's also probably lower than 23 years because you're figuring a static electricity cost for that many kilowatts. And,
Right.
I mean, it went up 10-20% last year.
910,000 is the number you should be.
Over 20 years, it's
Now,
gonna
is
go
the-
up a
is the
lot more than
900
65
Yeah,
a
it's
year.
583.
Offsetting.
The nine hundred and
But he
ten
was
does,
using the 1.4.
the 910 is
still
not,
14 years.
It's Deborah?
we're all trying to talk, so sorry. The 910 does not include the 30% discount or the 30%
No,
tax credit.
and that's the,
Actually, neither one of those
neither
numbers
do.
do.
One is the roof and the solar,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other is the solar. So you can see the cost of the roof is, I don't know what that is, 320 or something, 330.
And neither one of those numbers include the 30%.
30%.
That would be down in line 403.
Okay, thank you.
It'd be the 583,870 minus the 191,331. Correct?
That's correct.
The biggest thing with this project is usually when a person bids out a solar project, you deal with one contractor and they basically just cover all the expense and they bring you a line item fee. Here we're dealing with 4 different firms. It's really difficult to come up with a hard number that we actually can work with, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if the decision is we're not gonna replace the entire roof, we certainly can go back to our roofing consultant, and I think we can get those design fees down as well, significantly.
Yeah, thank you for putting all this time into
Yeah,
it.
thanks, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, yeah, thank you.
Yep. All right,
But
any other questions?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Thank you, Chris.
Do you guys want me to stick around? You want me to leave so you can talk about this?
I mean, we just talked about it. You already know what's gonna happen here in a minute. So
I think we need to do some more homework still.
we have to do some more homework.
Yeah,
So,
but this is good.
but this
you
is a
know.
good start.
Would you like me to release that structural engineer to evaluate the roof structure?
I think so.
Touch base with you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the solar proposal as, letter as presented. We have a first and a second. All those in favor? All opposed? Nay. Motion fails unanimously. But it was a good exercise. It was a good stepping process.
Times last year was all I'm like, you guys open it.
All right, let's move on to superintendent updates.
Yeah, I'll start with our post-bond survey. We're up to 437 responses. FEH is gonna be, actually it's up to 441 now in the last hour and a half, so that's good. FEH will be combining all of the responses and generate some themes for us connected to things that we can maybe do differently or better to communicate and move forward with the project So I don't know if we want to give this another couple weeks to be open. That's kind of the plan right now through the end of the month. We have a good chunk of, so far, of the respondents. 74% said they voted yes, and 26% said they voted no. So we'll have a good number of no's to look at to see if there's specific things. But right now, by far the number one reason why somebody voted no was because it would increase my taxes. 63% of the people that voted no, that was the reason why. Quick update on the principal search. We've got our committees all set and identified. We're going to screen, Evan and I and Angela are screening candidates next Tuesday afternoon. We'll narrow it down hopefully to 2 finalists, which we'll bring in on March 6th. Candidate will start here, work through a performance task with a set of parents and Angela. There'll be a couple other administrators, directors that are part of that committee. Then I'll take the candidate over to Washington. We'll have some first graders give a tour to the candidate. I'll see how that person interacts with kids. And then they'll go before the big committee of support staff, teachers there at Washington. They'll have a performance task as well there that they'll have to demonstrate for that group of people. Each committee member will have the opportunity to give feedback connected to the candidates, and then we'll come back here to the central office as an admin team and look through that data, and I'll make a final recommendation to the board as far as who our next person is going to be. I've got my final mission vision work scheduled for tomorrow after school, so I'll be bringing to you some drafts of both of those. Yeah, should be close to spring break or shortly thereafter. Wanted to share, this is from Indian Hills, just some stats around concurrent enrollment. I'm not going to dive into this, but you can look at it. This is something that they shared with me, and I thought it'd be good just to give to you. But we had 180 students last year that took concurrent enrollment class, so not a bad number. I think we could try to get that up a little bit higher and continue to find ways for kids to get that college credit paid for. You saw the new salary schedule got approved. Just thankful for again all the hard work that's gone into that from Evan, from our negotiations team, and the board members that were able to be a part of that. It's a really good way to approach it, and I'm thankful that we were able to do that. CT Advisory Board meets next week. I know some of you are invited, or maybe all of you are invited. Just let me know if you plan to go to that, because if you do, I want to make sure that if we have more than 3 people, we have to post it. Don't feel like you have to, but if you want to go, just shoot me an email so I can make sure we get that done. This Friday, we're going to have True North on site. We're going to have about 20-ish staff members that are going to listen to their insurance benefits proposal. We're meeting with them tomorrow actually to kind of finalize what we think it should look like with some feedback from them, and then we'll bring everybody in on Friday. I invited those of you on the HR negotiations team. If you want to come, you're more than welcome to. Don't feel like you have to. Again, it's just kind of the initial proposal from this entity. So excited about that. We really haven't gotten much more from the other 3 yet, and I think the reason is they're not thinking quite outside the box like this True North is. So we'll see. We did get our trust renewal rates, and they were astronomical. So. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Any questions? Well, it's time for highlights. Christy, do you want to start?
Sure. I think it was great hearing from Angela. It's exciting to see, the students are improving and just get an insight into, kind of what their process is. I feel like I learned more in that little, presentation than I've, had into what you guys are truly out there doing, on a day-to-day. So that was really good to see. There's something else I was going to mention, and I'm not drawing a blank now. So I will move on and let that go.
Angela, growth, 100% growth, yeah. Yeah, that's really a highlight. I mean, the way you put it, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it was just, everybody could relate to looking at our goals and then falling short year after year, and then just to change the goal to something more meaningful, and how that's been a real paradigm shift for the teachers and the students. I mean, it's just so great. Oh man,
And I did remember my other one. I can go
Go
back real
ahead.
quick. I just really wanted to, I know not all the board members got to be there, but they did a teacher appreciation night at the basketball game the other night. It was really cool to see all of the teachers there, and they did some drawings with the gift cards, and I just thought it was a really positive feel. So great job, Zach, for setting that up, and I felt like the teachers were really into it and appreciated it too, so that was good to see.
Thanks. Mark?
I think my highlight, obviously Andrew's presentation. I think it's cool how you intertwined loving the kids, but then also looking at the data. So you have to find that fine balance of how do you do both so we can show that we're making improvements. So that's awesome. And then just the negotiation part of it, being my first year in that has been kind of eye-opening of what all goes into that. But then just to see the collaboration. I mean, we had I don't know how many meetings, and every time there was set things to come back with and talking back and forth, and Evan doing his crunching of the numbers in seconds also helps. So that was just a cool thing to be a part of and see hopefully the new norm of the more of a communication than it is in negotiation. So it's cool.
Tristan?
I'm gonna add on to what everyone else has said. Angela's presentation was really good, very easy to understand for me, and Chris also too for being able to talk up here and just spew out information on the fly. I know he's not here, but it was very helpful to have that. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks for being here.
I'll back up what Mark was saying about negotiations. I'm glad to hear this is becoming more of a collaborative process. I know we've always talked about doing that. Sounds like this year we're moving towards that finally, which is awesome. The new pay scale, I think, is probably a good. It's good move in the right direction. And then Angela, your presentation. I just want to point out your Enneagram that you showed, where everybody was. I'm a 5, and you had 0 5s in there, and so that completely backed up my decision not to become a teacher.
There might be a reason why. That's funny.
Thanks, Ty. Dave?
Yes, well, first of all, thanks, Angela, for everything, and I'm very impressed with your building, your leadership, and the growth. I am very happy that you're on the team for the new principal. I think Angela's on there. I think that better integration between the buildings. I get the impression that kids coming in at 45% proficiency is a little tough. I think that the baseline is a little too low for us. I think if we could get that where they come into your building, I think we could see a lot more proficiency. And I know that not every kid can be proficient, but I think we can do a little bit better than 45%. I think if we get them to you at a higher proficiency, I think that we're already very proud of kids, but I think we could be very, very proud. Last thing is I want to thank Evan and Zach and the team for the new salary schedule, and I think financially speaking, this really gives us certainty in our expenses on the expense side, which is very, very important, to more stability. And I'm very pleased that we're getting our teachers as that percent of wages and benefits as part of our budget into that 65 to 68% range, which is the state average. For years, they've been at 56, and I think really that's been appalling. I don't want to sugarcoat it. So I'm glad to see that we're getting into that range, and we can do it with very, very little effect on our UAB and our solvency. Mm-hmm. So, well done to everyone, and thank you to the teachers for their collaborative effort. And from the financial perspective, I think it really helps our district. So, those are my highlights.
Thanks. Mark?
I think Angela's presentation, of course, that was fantastic. So, really watching what they do at Pence there has really been, I think, an honor as a board member and also as a parent, to see the way that kids have really turn the corner at that school. You know, I think they have great leadership in that building. I think she sets a great standard for the rest of the district. So I always really enjoy sitting through her updates and seeing what they have going on there. And I'm glad that you made it a lot longer than 5 minutes because it gave us a lot of information. It's good for us to know. And then Chris Smith, you know, like I said, just, you know, something I want to bring up about him. You know, he comes to a lot of our meetings and puts a lot of work into our district, you know, and I wish he was still here so he could hear this, but just give him a really special thanks because, you know, this is the school that he grew up in, you know, and I think he really takes a lot of extra attention to the school. And, you know, even when he knows things may not materialize, he puts a lot of work into projects and bids and so on and so forth, you know, and I just really appreciate his time and his commitment that he does for the district here, and I think we should all be really appreciative of that. So.
Agreed. Yeah. I guess, you know, it's echoing something we said at the last board meeting. I think that the committee work is really making things sort of swim along rather than just treading water and having really long meetings. So I think that, at least from my perspective, we're working along together faster, making more progress with greater ease, and that's really nice to just feel like we can come to meetings and we can work collaboratively and understand all the information. And then Angela, thank you. I know I love the themes, the mountain themes, and I just love how you can get the kids to understand, you know, the why, because they're young, so you know and to show them visually and to help them understand their progress in a private way, and it's really, really cool. So thank you for doing that. And again, the video is awesome. I feel like we need to market that a little bit more too as we feature what we're doing in the district. Also, the video that went out today, I think, was a highlight. Just getting a video out about enrollment, something new for us as a district. So glad that got out there. Thank you, guys. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Christy and Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:26 p.m.
You guys are so
Thank you all.
adjourn every time.